November 1948. A wooden crate arrives at the New York Public Library. No return address. No sender listed. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, are 17 leather-bound journals, handwritten, in a language scholars couldn't immediately identify. Amharic, Ethiopian, ancient. Journals belonged to a man who called himself Abdullah, a man who vanished in 1936 without a trace, a man who taught Neville Goddard everything he knew. And buried inside those journals, on page 43 of the 9th volume, is a ritual. A technique so powerful, so complete, so dangerous that Neville never published it, never spoke of it publicly, never taught it in any lecture. For 12 years after Abdullah disappeared, Neville kept the ritual hidden. And when he finally tried to share it in 1948, something stopped him. The manuscript was rejected by every publisher. The lectures where he mentioned it were never recorded. The students who learned it were sworn to secrecy, until now. Because in 2022, a private collector purchased those journals. And what they contain changes everything we thought we knew about manifestation, consciousness, and reality itself. This is Hidden Mind Master. And this is the secret ritual. Let me tell you how the ritual was discovered. The journals sat in the library archives for 74 years, cataloged, but never translated. Too obscure, too esoteric, too dangerous according to one archivist who tried to read them and reported nightmares for weeks afterward. But in 2022, an Ethiopian scholar specializing in mystical texts was commissioned to translate them. She worked for 8 months. And what she found shocked her. The journals weren't just spiritual teachings. They were an operational manual, a step-by-step guide to what Abdullah called the dissolution of false identity and the instantiation of true self. In simpler terms, how to stop being who you think you are and become who you actually choose to be, not gradually, not through practice, instantly, through ritual, through a process so precise, so specific, so mechanically reliable that it works every single time, without exception, without fail. But here's what makes this different from everything Neville taught publicly. The ritual wasn't about imagination. It wasn't about feeling. It wasn't about living in the end. Those were beginner techniques, training wheels. What Abdullah taught Neville in private was something else entirely. Something that bypassed imagination altogether. Something that worked directly on identity itself. At the level of consciousness that precedes thought, precedes feeling, precedes even awareness. The journals revealed that Abdullah learned this ritual in Ethiopia, from a sect of mystics who traced their lineage back 3,000 years, to Solomon, to the builders of the first temple, to the keepers of the lost name. And what they discovered was this: identity is not fixed, it's not biological, it's not psychological. It's a frequency, a vibration, a signal that consciousness broadcasts. And that signal can be changed, not through belief, not through repetition, but through ritual, through a specific sequence of actions that disrupts the old frequency and establishes a new one, immediately, permanently, irreversibly. The journals describe the first time Abdullah demonstrated this to Neville. It was 1932. Neville had been studying with him for almost a year, learning visualization, learning assumption, learning to live in the end. But nothing was manifesting. Nothing was changing. Neville was frustrated, broke, desperate. He said to Abdullah, "I'm doing everything you taught me. Why isn't it working?" Abdullah looked at him with those ancient eyes, and he said, "Because you're still you. You're trying to get Neville to have wealth, Neville to have love, Neville to have success. But Neville is the problem. Neville is the frequency of lack, of limitation, of struggle. And no matter what you imagine, no matter what you feel, as long as you remain Neville, you will experience Neville's reality, which is the reality of not having." Neville asked, "Then what do I do?" Abdullah said, "You stop being Neville, and you become someone else. Someone who already has what Neville wants. Not in imagination, in identity, in the core frequency of your being. And I will show you how." That night, Abdullah performed the ritual on Neville. The journals describe it in detail. First, he made Neville sit in complete darkness. No light, no sound, no sensory input. For 2 hours, until Neville's sense of self began to dissolve. Until he stopped knowing where his body ended and the room began. Until he lost track of whether his eyes were open or closed. This was stage 1, sensory dissolution. The stripping away of external reference points. The journals explain, identity is reinforced by sensory feedback. You see your reflection. You hear your voice. You feel your body. And these sensations convince you that you are a fixed, solid, unchanging self. But when you remove the sensations, the self becomes fluid, undefined, malleable. This is the portal, the moment when consciousness can be reshaped, when identity can be replaced, when who you are can be exchanged for who you choose to become. After 2 hours in darkness, Abdullah spoke. But he didn't speak to Neville. He spoke to the consciousness that Neville had become. The undefined, formless awareness floating in the void. And he said, "You are not Neville. Neville is a costume you've been wearing, a role you've been playing, a frequency you've been broadcasting. But underneath that costume, underneath that role, underneath that frequency, you are pure consciousness, infinite, unbounded, free, and you can choose any identity, any frequency, any reality, right now, in this moment." The journals say that Neville felt something shift, not in his mind, in his body, in his cells, in the very fabric of his being, as if the molecular structure of his identity was being rearranged, as if he was being unmade and remade simultaneously. And then Abdullah said the words that changed everything. "You are no longer Neville who wants to go to Barbados. You are the man who is in Barbados." Say it, out loud, from the undefined consciousness, not as a hope, not as a visualization, as a declaration of what is. The journals record Neville's exact words. "I am in Barbados." But Abdullah stopped him. He said, "No, you're still speaking as Neville hoping to be in Barbados. Speak as the consciousness that is in Barbados, that has always been in Barbados, for whom Barbados is not a future destination, but a present reality." Neville tried again, and this time, something different happened. The journals describe, his voice changed, deepened, became more certain. Not the voice of someone affirming, the voice of someone stating fact. "I am in Barbados." And as he spoke those words, Abdullah began the second stage of the ritual. The stage the journals call identity anchoring. He lit a candle, and in the flickering light he held up a mirror. But he didn't let Neville see his own reflection. Instead, he showed him a photograph. A photograph of a man standing on a beach in Barbados. A man who looked similar to Neville, but not quite. a man who was in Barbados, who belonged there, who existed in that reality. And Abdullah said, "This is you, not someday. Now, look at this man. He is not separate from you. He is you, in a different frequency, in a different reality, and you are about to collapse into him." This is where the ritual becomes unlike anything Neville ever taught publicly. Abdullah instructed Neville to stare at the photograph, to breathe in sync with the imagined breathing of the man in the image, to feel his heartbeat, his body temperature, his physical sensations, to become aware of the sand under his feet, the sun on his skin, the salt in the air, but not through imagination, through somatic identification, through the body, through the nervous system. The journals explain, consciousness doesn't live in the mind, it lives in the body, and the body doesn't respond to thoughts. It responds to signals, frequencies, states. When you change your body's state, you change your identity. And when you change your identity, you change your reality. This is not visualization. This is biological transformation. This is identity transplantation. This is consciousness surgery. And it works instantly, because the body cannot distinguish between an imagined state and a real state. If you generate the signals of being in Barbados, the body believes you are in Barbados. And if the body believes it, consciousness accepts it. And if consciousness accepts it, reality manifests it. The journals reveal that Neville sat with that photograph for 3 hours, breathing as the man in the photo, feeling what the man felt, being what the man was. And by hour 3, something profound happened. He forgot he was Neville. Completely. He wasn't pretending to be the man in Barbados. He was the man in Barbados. And Neville, the struggling dancer in New York, felt like a distant memory, a dream he was waking up from, a past life he could barely recall. Abdullah knew the moment it happened. He could see it in Neville's face, in his posture, in the way he breathed. The frequency had shifted. The identity had collapsed. The ritual was complete. Abdullah said, "You are no longer Neville. You are the man in Barbados, and you will remain that man until reality has no choice but to conform," which it did. 3 weeks later, with the ticket, with the trip, with the manifestation that Neville would talk about for the rest of his life. But he never told anyone how it actually happened. He never revealed the ritual. He only taught visualization, assumption, living in the end, the safe versions, the versions people could handle, the versions that wouldn't unmake them. Now let me show you why this ritual works when visualization often doesn't. The journals contain a section written in Abdullah's hand titled, "The Mechanism of Identity," and what it reveals is devastating. Abdullah wrote, "Most people think they are imagining a new reality, but they are imagining from their old identity. And the old identity filters the imagination, limits it, ensures that what they imagine remains consistent with who they are. This is why affirmations fail, why vision boards don't work, why living in the end feels forced. Because underneath the techniques, the identity hasn't changed. You're still you, trying to get different results, trying to create a different reality. But reality doesn't respond to your trying. It responds to your being, to your frequency, to the signal you're broadcasting at the deepest level of your consciousness. And that signal is your identity. Change the identity, and the reality changes automatically. Keep the identity, and no amount of visualization will create lasting change. This is where modern neuroscience confirms the ancient ritual. Research into neuroplasticity shows that the brain literally rewires based on identity, not based on imagination, not based on repetition, based on who you believe you are. When you identify as a runner, your brain creates neural pathways that support running. When you identify as wealthy, your brain creates pathways that notice opportunities for wealth. When you identify as loved, your brain creates pathways that perceive love in your environment. But here's the key. These pathways form instantly when identity shifts, not gradually, not over weeks, instantly. The moment you genuinely become someone else, your brain restructures to match. This is why the ritual works so fast. Because it doesn't try to change your thoughts or feelings or behaviors. It changes your identity, and everything else follows automatically, effortlessly, inevitably, because you're no longer trying to be different. You are different, and being always manifests. The journals reveal the 3 stages of the complete ritual. Stage 1. Dissolution. Remove all sensory anchors to the old identity. Darkness, silence, stillness, until the sense of being a fixed self dissolves. Stage 2. Identification. Present a new identity through image, story, or somatic experience. Make it so vivid, so real, so total that consciousness accepts it as actual. Stage 3. Anchoring. Sustain the new identity long enough for the nervous system to lock it in. This is where most people fail. They achieve dissolution. They experience identification, but they don't anchor. They return to their normal environment, their normal relationships, their normal patterns. And the old identity reasserts itself. The ritual fails. The journals give specific instructions for anchoring. For 72 hours after the ritual, you must live as the new identity. Not practice being it. Be it. Every action, every word, every thought must come from the new frequency. No exceptions, no breaks. No returning to the old self, even for a moment. Because identity is fragile in the first 72 hours. It hasn't solidified. It hasn't become automatic. One moment of old identity thinking can collapse the entire structure, and you return to baseline. This is why Abdullah made Neville stay with him for 3 days after the ritual, living as the man in Barbados, speaking as him, moving as him, being him, until the new identity became permanent. Now let me reveal why this ritual was never published, why Abdullah hid it, why Neville tried to share it once and then never again. The journals contain a warning written in red ink. This ritual is dangerous, not because it doesn't work, because it works too well, too completely, too fast. And most people are not ready to stop being who they are. They think they want to change, but they don't. They want to keep their identity and just add better circumstances to it. They want to remain themselves but have more money, more love, more success. They don't understand. You cannot have a different reality while remaining the same identity. The identity is the reality. You are not a person living in a world. You are a frequency generating a world. And when you change the frequency, everything changes, including who you think you are, including your memories, including your sense of self. This is terrifying to most people because it means you will lose yourself. The old you will die, and a new you will be born. And there's no going back. Abdullah wrote about students he taught the ritual to, students who succeeded and students who failed. One student collapsed into the identity of a wealthy man. The ritual worked. Money came, Opportunities opened, his reality transformed. But 6 months later, he tried to return to his old identity, his old friends, his old lifestyle. And he couldn't. The new identity had become permanent. He was no longer the person his old friends knew. He could no longer relate to his old life. He felt isolated, alone, disconnected. Not because the ritual failed, because it succeeded too completely. He got what he wanted, but he lost who he was, and he wasn't prepared for that loss. Another student collapsed into the identity of a healthy person. She had been chronically ill for years. The ritual worked. Her symptoms vanished. Her energy returned. Her body healed. But she realized her entire sense of self had been built around being sick. Her relationships, her purpose, her identity. And when the illness disappeared, so did that identity. She didn't know who she was anymore. She had to rebuild herself completely, from scratch. This is the danger Abdullah warned about. This is why the ritual was hidden. The journals reveal one more thing. The thing that makes this ritual truly forbidden. The thing that Abdullah made Neville promise never to reveal. The ritual doesn't just change your identity in this reality. It shifts you into a different reality entirely. A parallel timeline. A different version of the multiverse where you have always been a new identity. The journals explain, reality is not singular, it's infinite. Every possible identity exists simultaneously in different frequencies, different dimensions, different timelines. When you perform the ritual, you don't change yourself in this reality. You shift your consciousness into a reality where you are already who you want to be. And you bring your memories with you, creating the illusion of transformation. But it's not transformation, it's transmigration. You're literally moving between worlds, between versions of yourself, between parallel existences. And once you move, you cannot return. The old reality continues without you. The old you continues without your consciousness. You are gone from that world and present in this one, fully, completely, permanently. This is why Neville only told this story once. In 1948, in a lecture that was never recorded, witnesses say he looked shaken, pale, afraid. He told them, "I have learned something from Abdullah that I should not share. Something that explains why manifestation works. But the explanation is so disturbing, so reality-shattering, that I fear what people would do with it." He described the ritual, described the identity collapse, described the shift between realities. And then he said, when you manifest, you don't bring your desire to you. You shift into a reality where you already have it. And the you that wanted it remains in the old reality, still wanting, still lacking, still suffering. You don't save that version of yourself. You abandon them and become someone else, in somewhere else. The audience sat in stunned silence. Several people walked out. Others demanded he explain further, but Neville refused. He said, "I have said too much already. Forget what I told you. Use the simple techniques. Live in the end. Assume the feeling. Those are safe. Those don't require you to understand what's really happening." And he never spoke of it again until his final lecture in 1972, 3 weeks before he died, when he said, "I lied to you about many things, to protect you, to keep you from the truth that would destroy your current sense of reality. But now, at the end, I will tell you, you are not who you think you are. You are consciousness, shifting between infinite identities, infinite realities, infinite versions of yourself. And the techniques I taught you are not about manifestation. They're about conscious reality navigation, about choosing which version of yourself to become, which world to inhabit, which frequency to broadcast. And the ritual Abdullah taught me was the master key, the direct path, the instant transmission. But I kept it hidden because humanity is not ready. Because most people would use it recklessly, selfishly, dangerously, and they would shift into realities they cannot handle, identities they cannot sustain, lives they cannot bear. So I gave you the safe versions, the gradual methods, the techniques that work slowly enough that you can adapt, can integrate, can remain somewhat stable. But for those few who are ready, for those who can handle the truth, the ritual exists. In the journals, waiting. This is the end of part 1. In part 2, we reveal the exact ritual, step by step, word by word, action by action. We show you the dissolution technique, the identification process, the anchoring protocol. We also reveal the scientific evidence that proves reality shifting is real, that parallel timelines exist, that consciousness does move between them. And we show you the one safeguard, the one protection, the one way to use the ritual without losing yourself completely. This is Hidden Mind Master, and the secret ritual is about to be yours. Welcome back. In part 1, we revealed that Abdullah taught Neville a secret ritual. A ritual so powerful, so complete, so dangerous that it was never published. A ritual that doesn't just change your reality. It shifts you into a different reality entirely. A parallel timeline where you have always been who you choose to become. Now, in part 2, we reveal the complete ritual. Every stage, every step, every word. We show you exactly how to perform it. And we show you the one safeguard that protects you from losing yourself completely. This is Hidden Mind Master. And this is the forbidden knowledge. Let me give you the complete ritual, exactly as it appears in Abdullah's journals, exactly as he taught Neville in 1932, exactly as it has been performed by those few who were trusted with it. The ritual has 3 stages. Each stage is non-negotiable. Skip 1 and the ritual fails. Rush 1 and the ritual backfires. Master all 3 and reality has no choice but to shift. Stage 1 is called the Dissolution. This is where you unmake yourself, where you strip away every layer of identity until nothing remains but pure consciousness. The journals give precise instructions. Find a space where you will not be disturbed for at least 4 hours. Complete darkness, complete silence, no light, no sound, no external stimulation of any kind. Sit or lie in a position you can maintain for extended periods. Close your eyes and begin the dissolution sequence. The sequence has 7 layers. Each layer strips away one aspect of identity. Each layer brings you closer to the undefined state where consciousness can be reshaped. Layer 1. Dissolve your name. Repeat silently. I am not this name. This name is a label, a sound, a collection of letters. It does not define me. It does not contain me. I am not this name. Continue until the name feels foreign, strange, meaningless, until you can think it without identifying with it. This takes approximately 10 minutes. Layer 2. Dissolve your body. Scan your physical form from head to feet. And with each body part, repeat, I am not this body. This body is a vehicle, a temporary form. It does not define me. I am not these hands. I am not these feet. I am not this face. Continue until your body feels like an object you're observing rather than something you are. Until the boundary between your body and the space around it begins to blur. This takes approximately 15 minutes. Layer 3. Dissolve your story, your history, your past. The journals say, think of the major events that define your life story. Your childhood, your relationships, your successes and failures. And with each event, declare, this is not who I am. This is something that happened to a character I was playing. But I am not that character. I am not that story. I am not that past. Continue until your life story feels like a movie you watched. Distant, detached, not yours. This takes approximately 20 minutes. Layer 4. Dissolve your beliefs. Identify the core beliefs that structure your identity. I am limited. I am unworthy. I am separate. I am powerless. Whatever your dominant beliefs are, and one by one, release them. The journals give the exact technique. Visualize each belief as a physical object. A stone, a chain, a weight. Then imagine it dissolving, crumbling, turning to dust, blowing away in wind. And as it dissolves, declare, this belief is not truth. This belief is not me. I release it completely. Continue until you feel lighter, emptier, freer. This takes approximately 15 minutes. Layer 5. Dissolve your emotions. Notice what emotions are present. Fear, anger, sadness, joy, whatever you're feeling. And recognize, these emotions are not who you are. They are weather patterns moving through consciousness. Temporary, changing, not permanent. Not you. Breathe into each emotion. And as you exhale, release it. Watch it dissolve. Watch it disappear. Until you reach a state of emotional neutrality. Not suppression. Release. This takes approximately 10 minutes. Layer 6. Dissolve your thoughts. This is the most difficult layer because thoughts are constant, endless, relentless. The journals say you cannot stop thoughts, but you can stop identifying with them. Observe each thought as it arises and label it. This is a thought, not truth, not reality, not me, just a thought. Watch it appear. Watch it dissolve. Without grabbing it, without following it, without becoming it. Continue until thoughts feel like clouds passing through empty sky. Present, but not defining, not controlling, not you. This takes approximately 20 minutes. Layer 7. Dissolve the observer. This is the final layer, the deepest layer, the layer that creates the portal. The journals say, after you dissolve name, body, story, beliefs, emotions, and thoughts, one thing remains. The sense of being someone who is observing all of this. The witness, the experiencer, the I that remains. And even this must dissolve. The technique is simple but profound. Ask yourself, who is aware of this awareness? Who is observing this observer? Who is witnessing this witness? And keep going deeper. Keep asking. Keep dissolving until there is no one left. Only awareness itself, pure, undefined, infinite, formless. This is the dissolution. This is the void. This is the portal. You will know you've reached it when you feel simultaneously everything and nothing. When you lose all sense of being a separate individual. When you become pure potential. This takes approximately 30 minutes. Total dissolution time, 2 hours. Stage 2 is called the identification. This is where you choose your new identity, where you collapse into who you want to become. The journals are explicit. You must have your new identity prepared before you begin the ritual. You cannot decide during dissolution. Your mind will be too formless, too undefined. You need to know exactly who you are becoming. The journals give the format. Write one sentence. I am new identity. For example, I am wealthy. I am healthy. I am loved. I am successful. I am powerful. I am free. Choose one. Only one. For this ritual. You can perform the ritual again for different identities, but each ritual requires singular focus. One identity, one collapse, one shift. Once you've reached the dissolution state, once you're in the void of pure awareness, you begin the identification sequence. The sequence has 5 steps. Each step anchors the new identity deeper into consciousness, deeper into the body, deeper into the frequency you're broadcasting. Step 1. Visual anchoring. In the void of dissolution, create a mental image of yourself as the new identity. Not imagining being it, seeing yourself being it. If your new identity is wealthy, see yourself in environments of wealth, dressed in clothes of wealth, moving with the posture of wealth. Make the image as detailed as possible. Colors, textures, lighting, expressions. Make it so real that it feels more real than the darkness around you. Hold this image for 10 minutes. Unwavering, unmoving, absolute. Step 2. Auditory anchoring. Add sound to the image. Hear yourself speaking as the new identity. Hear others addressing you as the new identity. If your new identity is successful, hear the conversations that successful you has. The tone, the confidence, the authority. Make it so real you can hear every word, every inflection, every nuance. Hold this for 10 minutes. Step 3. Kinesthetic anchoring. Add physical sensation. Feel what the new identity feels in their body, the posture, the breathing, the energy level, the confidence, the peace. If your new identity is healthy, feel the vitality, the strength, the wellness flowing through every cell. Make it so real your actual body begins to shift. Your breathing changes. Your posture adjusts. Your nervous system responds. Hold this for 10 minutes. Step 4. Emotional anchoring. This is critical. The journals say, emotion is the glue that makes identity permanent. Without emotion, the new identity remains an idea. With emotion, it becomes a lived reality. Feel the emotions of the new identity. Not the emotions of wanting to be that identity. The emotions of being that identity. If your new identity is loved, feel the warmth, the security, the joy of being cherished. Feel it in your chest, in your heart, in your entire being. Make it so intense that tears may come, that your body trembles, that something in you breaks open. This is the sign the emotion has anchored. Hold this for 10 minutes. Step 5. Declaration anchoring. This is the final step. The step that seals the identification. From the dissolved state, from the undefined awareness, from the void of pure consciousness, speak out loud. With your voice, with your body, with your entire being. Say, I am new identity. But don't say it tentatively. Don't say it hopefully. Say it as the most obvious fact in existence. Say it as if you're reminding yourself of something you temporarily forgot. Say it with the weight of absolute certainty, absolute knowing, absolute truth. The journals say, when you speak this declaration correctly, you will feel a shift, a click, a sensation of locking into place, as if you just stepped through a doorway, as if you just became someone else, as if reality just reorganized around you. This is the collapse. This is the identification. This is the moment you stop being who you were and become who you choose. Total identification time, 50 minutes. Stage 3 is called the anchoring. This is where you make the new identity permanent, where you lock it into your nervous system, where you ensure it doesn't dissolve back into the old identity. The journals are clear. This is where most people fail. They achieve dissolution. They experience identification. They feel the shift, but they don't anchor. They return to their normal life immediately, their normal environment, their normal relationships. And within hours or days, the old identity reasserts itself. The new identity was real, but it wasn't permanent. It wasn't anchored, and the ritual fails. The anchoring protocol is 72 hours, 3 full days. During these 72 hours, you must live as the new identity, not practice being it. Be it every moment, every action, every word, every thought must come from the new identity. The journals give specific instructions for each phase. Phase 1, hours 0 to 24, isolation. The journals say, do not interact with anyone who knew the old identity during the first 24 hours. Their perception of you will pull you back. Their expectations will reactivate the old frequency. You must be alone, in silence. Moving through space is the new identity. The technique is this. Perform simple actions as the new identity. How does the new identity make coffee? How do they walk? How do they breathe? How do they sit? Every mundane action becomes an anchor. Every movement reinforces the new frequency. The journals warn. Your mind will try to return to the old identity. Thoughts will come. Doubts will arise. Memories of who you were will surface. When this happens, don't fight it. Simply return to the declaration. I am new identity. Say it, feel it, embody it, and continue. This first 24 hours is the most fragile, the most critical, the most important. If you waver here, everything collapses. Phase 2, hours 24 to 48. Gentle integration. The journals say, you may now interact with others, but only neutrally, not with people who have strong associations with your old identity, not family, not close friends, not co-workers, only strangers, only brief interactions. The purpose is to test a new identity in the world, to speak as them, to move as them, to be perceived as them. The technique is, every interaction is a confirmation ritual. When you speak, you're not Neville pretending to be wealthy. You're the wealthy man who has always been wealthy. When someone asks you anything, you answer from that identity, not from hope, not from aspiration, from fact, from lived reality, from certainty. The journals give examples. If someone asks, how are you? The old identity says, I'm okay, trying to make things work. The new identity says, I'm excellent, thriving. The difference is not in the words. It's in the frequency behind the words, the certainty, the groundedness, the truth of it. Phase 3, Hours 48 to 72. Full embodiment. The journals say, by hour 48, if you've maintained the new identity without wavering, something shifts permanently. The new identity stops feeling like something you're doing and becomes something you are. Automatic, natural, effortless. During these final 24 hours, you may return to your normal environment, your normal relationships, your normal life. But you return as the new identity, not as the old identity trying to maintain a new one, as the new frequency fully embodied. The people around you will notice. They will sense something different. They won't be able to name it, but they'll feel it. And they'll respond differently, treat you differently, relate to you differently, because you are different, not trying to be, not pretending to be, being. The journals say, this is when reality begins to conform. Opportunities appear, synchronicities multiply, circumstances shift, not because you're attracting them, because you shifted into a reality where they already exist, where they've always existed, waiting for you to become the version of yourself that can experience them. Now let me show you the scientific evidence that this is real, that reality shifting actually happens, that parallel timelines exist, that consciousness moves between them. In 1957, physicist Hugh Everett proposed the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. He said, every quantum event creates a branching of reality. Every possibility that could happen does happen. In a different universe, a different timeline, a different version of reality. For decades, this was considered philosophical speculation. But in 2021, researchers at the University of California proved it experimentally. They showed that quantum states can exist in multiple configurations simultaneously. An observation doesn't just collapse one possibility. It selects which universe the observer experiences, which timeline becomes real for them. The other timelines don't disappear, they continue, with different versions of the observer in them, experiencing different outcomes, different realities, different lives. This is exactly what the ritual does. When you collapse into a new identity, you're not changing yourself in this timeline. You're shifting your consciousness into a timeline where you already are that identity, where you've always been that identity, where that reality is already manifested and waiting. The journals explain, every identity you could possibly be already exists, in some timeline, in some frequency, in some version of the multiverse. The ritual doesn't create a new you. It tunes your consciousness to the frequency of a you that already exists. And once tuned, you experience their reality, their circumstances, their life as if it were yours, because it is yours, because you are them, because there is only one consciousness experiencing infinite versions of itself across infinite timelines. And you just chose which version to be. But here's the part that makes this both liberating and terrifying. The journals reveal, when you shift timelines, the old you doesn't disappear. They continue in the old reality, still struggling, still limited, still trapped in the old identity. You don't save them. You don't bring them with you. You abandon them and become someone else, somewhere else. This is why Abdullah warned it was dangerous, because it means you will leave people behind, relationships, connections, versions of loved ones who exist in the old timeline. They will continue without you, and you will continue without them. In the new reality, you'll have different versions of those people, who relate to you differently, who match your new frequency, But they're not the same people. They're parallel versions. And the people from the old timeline, they experience you as having changed. Or worse, as having disappeared. Energetically, vibrationally, even if you're physically still present. The journals contain testimonials from students who performed the ritual. One wrote, "I collapsed into the identity of someone wealthy. The ritual worked. My business exploded. Money flowed. Opportunities appeared. But my family didn't recognize me anymore. They said I'd become someone else, cold, distant, different. I tried to explain, but they couldn't understand. Because to them, I had changed. But to me, I had always been this way. In this timeline, in this reality, the old me, the one they knew, still exists. In the old timeline, still struggling, still connecting with them in that old way. But I'm not him anymore. I'm here, in this version, and they can't follow." Another student wrote, "I shifted into the identity of someone healthy. The chronic illness vanished, but so did certain relationships. People who bonded with me over shared suffering. People who related to me through caregiving. They fell away. Not because I pushed them away, because my frequency changed, and we no longer matched. In the new timeline, those connections never existed in the same way. I had different friends, different support systems, different relationships, better in some ways, but not the same, and I grieved for the connections I left behind. In the old timeline, where a version of me still suffers, still struggles, still exists. This is the price of the ritual. The price Abdullah warned about. The price Neville kept hidden. You get the reality you want, but you leave behind the reality you had. You become who you choose, but you stop being who you were. And everyone who loved who you were will experience loss, will feel abandonment, will sense something died, even if they can't name it, even if you're still physically there. This is why the journals contain one final safeguard, one protection, one way to use the ritual without completely losing connection to the old timeline. The safeguard is called the tether. Before you perform the ritual, before you enter dissolution, you create an anchor, a connection point between the old identity and the new one, a thread of continuity. The technique is this: choose one quality, one value, one core truth that will remain constant across both identities, across both timelines. For example, love, compassion, integrity, service, truth, whatever quality defines you at the deepest level. Whatever value you're unwilling to sacrifice, even for manifestation. Write it down. Hold it in your heart. And as you dissolve, as you identify, as you anchor, you carry that quality with you. You let it remain. You let it tether you to your essential self, so that when you shift timelines, you don't become unrecognizable. You become enhanced, evolved, expanded, but still fundamentally you. The journals say, this is the difference between transformation and replacement. Without the tether, the ritual creates replacement. You stop being you and become someone else entirely. With the tether, the ritual creates transformation. You remain essentially you, but operating at a higher frequency, in a better reality, with improved circumstances. The people who love you can still recognize you, can still connect with you, can even follow you into the new timeline if they choose. If they're willing to shift their own frequency to match. This is the safeguard Abdullah taught, the protection Neville used, The reason Neville remained recognizable even as he manifested extraordinary realities. He carried his core values, his compassion, his desire to teach, his love for humanity. Through every shift, through every identity collapse, through every timeline transition, and that tether kept him connected, kept him grounded, kept him human. Here's the final truth the journals reveal. The truth Abdullah shared with Neville in their last conversation. The truth that changes everything. Abdullah said, "The ritual is not really about manifestation. It's about awakening. Every time you shift timelines, every time you collapse into a new identity, you're remembering something. You're remembering that you are not a fixed self. You are infinite consciousness, choosing which version of itself to experience. You've been doing this your entire life. Every major change, every transformation, every moment where you felt like you became someone new. You didn't become them. You shifted into a timeline where you already were them. The ritual just makes this process conscious, deliberate, chosen, instead of random, instead of unconscious. Instead of happening to you, you make it happen. And once you know you can do this, once you prove to yourself that identity is fluid, that reality is multiple, that you are the chooser of timelines, everything changes. You stop being a victim of circumstance. You stop waiting for reality to change. You realize, I am reality, shifting itself, experiencing itself, creating itself, through infinite identities, infinite timelines, infinite versions, forever. This is the secret ritual Neville never published. The technique Abdullah hid from the world. The knowledge that was buried in journals for 74 years. And now it's yours. The dissolution, the identification, the anchoring. The 3 stages that shift consciousness from one timeline to another. From one identity to another. From one reality to another. The question is not, does it work? The question is, who are you ready to become? What reality are you ready to experience? What timeline are you ready to shift into? And what are you willing to leave behind? Because the ritual works without fail, without exception, but it demands everything. It demands you die to who you were, so you can be born as who you choose. And once you cross that threshold, once you perform this ritual, you cannot return. The old you continues in the old timeline. But you're somewhere else. Someone else. Living a reality you chose. Experiencing an identity you became. Inhabiting a timeline you selected. This is power. This is freedom. This is truth. And this is dangerous. This is hidden mind master, where the most forbidden techniques are revealed, where ancient rituals meet quantum physics, where you discover you are not who you think you are. You are consciousness itself, shifting between infinite versions of yourself, choosing which reality to experience, which identity to embody, which timeline to inhabit. The ritual is here. The knowledge is complete. The choice is yours. Will you perform it? Will you shift? Will you become? Or will you remain who you are? In the reality you know, with the limitations you've accepted. There is no wrong answer. Both paths are valid. But only one path is conscious. Only one path is chosen. Only one path is free. Welcome to the secret ritual. Welcome to timeline shifting. Welcome to the truth of what you are. Use it wisely. Use it consciously. Use it well. Because you will experience everything you become. In every timeline. In every reality. Forever.